students, today we'll be discussing the nature of ancient Indian political thought. The objective of today's discussion is to give you an understanding of the basis of Indian political thought, the nature of the social structure, the interrelationship between polity, economy, and society, and finally, the nature of international relations prevalent in ancient India. Now, students, the tradition of Hindu political thought did not originate in a vacuum. It is invariably associated with the socio-economic conditions, customs of the people, and the geographical and racial uniqueness. Hindu political thought is different from the Western counterpart, as the Hindu personality, temperament, and outlook are different from what one finds in Europe. As a natural corollary, the working of Hindu political institutions is highly influenced by the nature of the socio-economic conditions prevalent in ancient India. For the convenience of our discussion, students, let us divide the entire discussion into a number of segments. We would first start with Rita, the basis of Hindu society. Then we move on with the ethical basis of governance and statecraft, that is Dharma. Thirdly, we move on with the explanation of the concept of DANDA, the relationship between Dharma and DANDA, the concept of duty, king-priest partnership, most popularly the Brahman-Kshatriya relationship in ancient society. Next, we would move on to forms of government in ancient India, how monarchy as well as elected governmental system were popular in ancient India. We'd also move on with the nature of decentralization of power, or the panchayat system. Why did people urge for the creation of a government? We would also delve deep into the reasons behind the origin of government. Then we move on with taxation and financial administration, which is very important for the governance of a state. And finally, international relations. Now, students, let us start with the first discussion on Rita. What is Rita? Rita refers to fixed laws which govern the universe. Students, just like the universe is governed by some fixed laws, the cosmic order, ancient Hindu writers stressed on the fact that similar universal principles also regulated the functioning of Indian society. Rita, or the universal laws, could also be replicated in the societal system. What is Rita? How does it govern society? Rita is basically the universal moral order of goodness and justice. It's based on truth. It is the natural law of things. Just like the universe is governed by some basic principles, fixed laws, in the same way, for a successful statecraft and societal harmony, Rita can also be replicated in the Hindu society. The ancient sages emphasized on the fixed societal laws governing Indian society. Now we shall move on to another important feature of Hindu political thought, that is Dharma. Dharma is said to be the basis of society and polity in ancient India. Dharma is not a religion, but a mode of life. It is a code of conduct that regulates life from birth till death. It is the eternal and necessary moral law, the law of righteousness. Dharma refers to a set of attributes to be obeyed by people. Truth, justice, non-stealing, righteousness, moving on the right path. In fact, students, the quintessential of Dharma is that one should not do to others what would be disliked by oneself. It is a path to a righteous life. In fact, all ancient scholars emphasized on Dharma as the central principle for integrating society. It integrated society with the individual. It integrated society with the political system. It helped individuals to evolve and move on in the purpose of life. Dharma is a multifaceted concept. We have heard of Swadharma, Varnashram Dharma, Ashram Dharma, Kula Dharma. These are all various principles to be followed by individuals. For example, Swadharma refers to the duties of an individual in the various capacities. As a son, as a father, as a husband, as a guardian, duties towards the family. Varnashram Dharma refers to the duties, functions of the different castes or varnas. The Dharma of the Brahman, teaching, performance of rituals. The Dharma of the Kshatriya, to rule, dispense justice. The Dharma of the Vaishya, to contribute to agriculture, trade and industry. The Dharma of the Shudra, to be a service provider. Every man was supposed to perform the Dharma of his own caste, ultimately contributing to a synchronized living, ensuring that there were no conflicts. Each was supposed to follow their own rules. Students, Dharma was just not a way of life, it was a way of governance too. It was the guiding principle for statecraft. Kings were supposed to follow Raj Dharma. Even in times of war, we come across Dharma Yudh, humane treatment of prisoners of war. So Dharma was also a basis of statecraft. Along with Dharma, there is another guiding principle of Indian polity, DANDA. DANDA is the science of power and coercion. DANDA is punishment. DANDA refers to a system of controlling people and subjects. All scriptures emphasize on Dharma and DANDA. The purpose of DANDA or punishment was to instill fear, because without fear, people do not act righteously. But then, there were some principles of DANDA. Punishment should be as deserved, neither too lenient nor too harsh. Now, there was a close connection between Dharma and DANDA. DANDA was needed to maintain Dharma. DANDA was the means, Dharma the end. In fact, it is believed that DANDA is the primary purpose of the state. The state without sanctions is no state at all. Therefore, Dharma and DANDA were considered to be the twin foundation of ancient Indian political thought. Ethics and morality was important, but then the science of punishment coercion was also important to keep the people and the society under control. Another important feature of ancient Indian political thought, students, is the emphasis on duties. Indian society was a duty-oriented society. It was unlike the Western society, which is a rights-friendly society. Duties refer to observance of certain rules for a fulfilling life, for a harmonious society. In fact, duties were a part of expressing gratitude. Following one's own dharma was a duty in itself. In fact, it was a duty of the people to make 5 great sacrifices. PUNCHA MAHAYAJNA. And what were those 5 great sacrifices? In fact, all of them spoke about the need of expressing gratitude for a life. Brahma Yajna was preservation of sacred learning. Pitri Yajna was dedicated to the ancestors. Your lineage, your connection, your respect for the lineage is important. Deva Yajna is sacrifice to gods. It's a symbol of recognition and gratitude of the fact that whatever man has and does really belongs to God. Bhuta Yajna refers to the ethical significance of sacrifices for the life that has been given to us, nature, earth, expressing gratitude to our fellow beings, sharing our possessions with needy people, and finally, Nri Yajna, sacrifice of bread, the other name for Indian hospitality, feeding others, living for others. This was the most important part of the ethical base of Indian society. The next interesting feature of Hindu thought is the king-priest partnership. The Brahman was superior to the king. His function was to interpret the scriptures and preside over the rituals. Coronation of the king by the priest was an important ritual, Raj Abhishek. The king got the right to rule only after the Raj Abhishek. Was there any conflict between the Brahmin and the Kshatriya? The Kshatriyas recognized the social superiority of the Brahmins. The Brahmins in turn recognized the power of the king to rule. The relationship was complementary. The Kshatriyas acknowledged the Brahmin superiority, gave them a share in the exercise of political authority. The chief advisor to the king was a Purohit, a Brahmin. Most of the Upanishadic literature focus on the important role of the Brahman in aiding and advising the king in the performance of his duties. The complementary relationship helped in smooth governance of the ancient state. Next, we come to forms of government. Ancient India was an age of monarchy. Monarchy was the most popular form of government. There is debate about the nature of monarchy. Some theorists emphasize on an absolute monarchical system, while others focus on limited monarchy. The power of the monarch, the king, was circumscribed by the Varna system. The king had to follow Raj Dharma. The king was the coordinator of the entire society, but he could not interfere into the caste norms. Apart from monarchy, students, we also find evidence of the existence of republican form of government. In fact, students, if you look into the Buddhist system of governance, it speaks about the republican system. So we find the existence of both the monarchical form of government as well as republican form of government in ancient India. What does ancient India say about the origin of state and kingship? There are basically 2 theories which are very popular regarding the origin of kingship. Generally, it's very popular that the king was a hereditary monarch. No, students. We find 2 specific theories. One theory says that the king is the divine representative of God on earth. It is the duty of the king to rule because he enjoys divine right, divine protection. The other theory says that the king should be an elected one. In fact, students, Aitreya Brahmana first spoke about the need for an elected king. Indra was chosen as the king, was elected as the king because he was the most valiant, most powerful, and the strongest. Similarly, Digha Nikaya, a Buddhist text, also speaks about the concept of great elect, Mahasammata. The king should be elected one. In fact, the theory of great elect speaks about the state of nature before the coming of the state. Just like we have studied about the social contract theory put forth by Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. Mahasammata is an elected ruler. The people had a duty to pay revenue to the king, and the king was enjoined to protect the people. Is it not interesting that centuries ago we had the notion of an elected head of the state? Another important feature of ancient political thought is the concept of political decentralization. The Indian states were not centralized. Rather, village was the basic unit of administration. The head of the village was the Gramini or the Gramik. He was assisted in his functions by the local assemblies. Local people had a right to be a part of the assembly. They would discuss problems pertaining to the villagers. The Gramik was obliged to provide a report of the functioning of the villages to the king. Local councils played an important role in ensuring that villages truly became self-governed. Now, it has been provided in the ancient text that the entire age of mankind may be divided into 4 great ages: Kreta Yug, Treta Yug, Dapar Yug, and Kaliyug. In fact, each stage is progressively less virtuous, with the last one is the Kaliyug, where the power of Dharma or righteousness is at its lowest. The state is needed, rather, the state becomes a necessity in order to control the evil tendencies of man. So why do we need a government? We need a government in order to control, govern the subjects. And that is the reason why government became an important attribute of ancient Indian thought. Another important area of discussion is international relations. Generally, it is believed that international relations is a Western academic discourse. Students, you will be highly amazed to find that the Arthashastra, the Manusmriti, speaks about a detailed analysis of interstate relations. The Arthashastra speaks about an elaborate scheme of diplomatic precepts. International relations was also emphasized by Manu, who said that the purpose of war and treaty making was to ensure not only creation of an alliance of friends, but also to increase your men, money, and resources. However, students, international precepts, diplomatic principles were all highly contemporary in terms of providing set of ideas which revolved around the establishment of a strong state. In other words, students, all the ancient Indian theorists focus on the need for the creation of a strong state, either by war or by signing a peace treaty. And Indian thought also emphasizes on the fact that treaty making should be resorted to when the king is aware of the fact that war will not lead to the victory of the state. Students, let us move on to another important feature of ancient Indian political thought, and that is the area of financial administration. Political economy, as a principle, was highly popular among the ancient states. The ancient texts emphasize on the need for a strong financial policy for building a strong state. In fact, Kautilyan Arthashastra states, in economics lies politics. A strong state can only be created on the basis of a strong economic system. Now, the various texts emphasize on revenue collection, and there were some major sources of revenue. Revenue from land, state monopolies like forestry, mining, state-owned industry, transportation of goods, fees, water assessment, taxes, tributes, even fines and gifts were a part of resource mobilization. The normal tax was land tax, which was 1/6 of the produce. The convenience of the taxpayer, his ability to pay, the source of his wealth were taken into consideration. In fact, if we observe the canons of taxation, we'll find them to be highly contemporary. Payment of taxes was compulsory for the people. Now, what can be deduced from the basis of our discussion? In order to give you a glimpse of the political system in ancient India, we also need to provide a critical analysis of the same. All was not good and fair in ancient India. We need to understand that the ancient Indian system was inegalitarian. Equality was not the guiding principle. Though equality was focused on during the Buddhist and the Jain times, yet pre-Buddhist political thought focused on the Varnashram system, and it was highly inegalitarian. The second thing that we need to focus on is Indian political tradition was essentially pluralistic in orientation. It was a plural society. It was not an individualistic society. It was a community of communities. Group life was important. However, students, though the system was inegalitarian, Hindu political writers never considered it to be unjust. They were uncritical of the established social order. In fact, they justified it. They felt that the need of the time was a system which would be governed by communities and groups. It was essential to ensure that the dharma of each group could be followed. And students, dharma was also circumscribed with karma, dharma and karma. In fact, if you have noticed one thing, throughout the discussion, we never discussed the concept of social conflict. Conflict between people, conflict between groups. In fact, the Hindu tradition totally ignored the entire area of social conflict. Nobody discussed about sectional interest. Varnashram dharma was the guiding principle. And then there was Swadharma, Ashram dharma. In fact, we do not find any discussion on why social groups would come into conflict. And if they came into conflict, how would that be resolved? How does a group acquire political power? How would general interests be articulated? In fact, the concept of conflict is absence, redressal of conflicts between groups. In fact, it is considered that group harmony or balance within the society would be maintained to dharma. Another important thing to note, students, Hindu political thought was highly didactic, prescriptive, and practical. In fact, if you look into the Dharma Shastras, you will find that They lay down a set of prescriptive behavior to be followed by the rulers and the ruled. Nobody was outside this observance of a code of behavior. The ruler had to follow Raj Dharma, had to fulfill the obligations which come with Raj Dharma. The people had to follow the rules of group life. Transgression from these rules were not allowed. And in fact, all these scriptures were very authoritative in their orientation. People would fear to violate them. And it was this instilling of fear in the concept of adharma. Dharma was always explained in terms of what righteousness was and what adharma or transgression of dharma was. In other words, this binary concept of dharma and adharma played an important role in controlling the lives of people, and all the text emphasized on a set of prescriptions to be followed by the people. Finally, students, let's sum up what we studied in the nature of Indian political thought. Number one, students, Hindu political thought is distinctly different from its Western counterpart. Some political ideas and precepts may appear to be similar, but then the orientation is distinctly Indian, and it reflects the Indian ethos and the Indian way of life. Secondly, the different institutions, state, kingship, legal system, reflect the then socio-political system. In fact, the nature of administration, statecraft, international relations, all reflect the then societal system, not to forget of the fact that the political system was a part of the social structure also. Another important thing to note is that the focus on kingship, village administration, interstate relations, diplomacy, financial administration, all these are very contemporary ideas, students. Political scholars writing in ancient times put forth ideas, theories, and principles which helped the state to be a welfare state. And as Kautilya said, in the happiness of the subjects lies the happiness of the king. How beautifully he put forth the idea of good governance through a righteous political system. In fact, the Mahabharata as well as the Manusmriti as political texts also speak about these ideas in their totality. Therefore, we can conveniently conclude that ideas on state, polity, economy reflect contemporariness in orientation as well as in practice. Thank you.